this meeting to order. Karen, can you please call the roll?
Yes. President Furman?
Present.
Vice President Curry?
Here.
Alder Bennett? Alder Conklin?
Present.
Alder Figueroa Cole?
Here. Do you hear me? I don't know.
Yes, thank you. Alder Foster?
Present.
Alder Heck?
Here.
And Alder Abbas is excused. You have quorum.
Thank you very much. We don't have anybody registered, Karen, is that correct?
That is correct. Currently no registrations.
All right, then we'll go ahead and skip the tech introduction since it's committee members that understand how that all works. But thank you. We'll move on to the first item, which is approval of minutes. Can I get a motion?
Move to approve.
Second.
Any questions, comments, corrections, suggestions for the minutes? Not seeing any, I'm going to assume approval by unanimous consent unless I hear otherwise. All right, perfect. Moving right along. We've got, as we just heard, we have no public comment, so we will skip that. And we'll move on to disclosures and recusals. Do any members of the body have any required disclosures or recusals under the city's ethics code? Not seeing any, we'll move on to our items for consideration this evening. Number two, agenda item number 2, 74572, the older social media policy. We have Larissa here from the council office who will talk about this item. So I will turn it right over to her and her presentation.
Okay, thank you for having me today. Let's see. So I wanted to bring up a presentation that you guys all had access to, so I could use it as a visual aid.
Larissa, you're coming through kind of low on my end for audio.
Okay, let's see. Right, it looks like my microphone is on. Can you hear me a little bit better?
We can hear it's just kind of muffled a little bit.
Okay. One moment, please. All right, wonderful. Can you hear me now?
Yes, way better. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I'm just going to put this in sharing mode. All right, and can you see my screen?
We actually see the wrong type of display. We see the next slide and the notes. So
okay, let's see.
Try that.
There we go. Awesome. Thank you so much.
Perfect. Thank you. Yeah.
All right. So, so this is just going to serve as a brief overview of the Common Council social media policy that was created in 2019. This serves as phase 1 of a trial for Alder's usage of Facebook and Twitter using city-owned accounts. So here's a brief overview. On July 16th, 2019, the Common Council adopted a resolution creating the President's Work Group to review council communication tools and processes. And like I said before, this serves as a trial, and what are included in here is Facebook and Twitter. So this is the index that is provided within the policy. I will not go into detail on each and every one of these points. But if you do have any questions regarding any of these items, I would be happy to address them at the end. And so, like I said before, this goes over the social media platforms that are being allowed in phase one, which is only Facebook and Twitter. And then these accounts would only be able to be used solely for official council business of that alder. And then this would be directly set up by city staff working with IT on that. And then the passport or the account and page would have to be transferred depending on term and who is the elected official at the time. So I wanted to provide you with a brief definition of Facebook, although I know many of you might be familiar with it. And then also, I would also like to point out that phase one only allows Facebook pages and not individual accounts. Facebook pages are the common utilization of Facebook for organizations or an entity of some sort. Facebook also has the ability to advertise, and then you would also have access to page insights and metrics. So monthly reports could be made, weekly reports could be made. You'd be able to see what posts are performing and increasing engagement. And then again, I wanted to provide a definition of Twitter. And this one, so phase one specifies that it can be an alder Twitter account where the user only has an account, and then both common council and alder would have access to the account. Phase one also provides information on what they consider an official city account. Facebook and Twitter can only be set up directly by city staff with the account ownership contact person being a city employee. The password for the account is managed by city staff. And then, like I said before, it's capable of being transferred depending on term. And the Facebook page account follows an official naming convention established by the city. And I will speak more on, I'll give an example later in the presentation. And then the public-facing portion of the Alder social media page directs visitors to their official City of Madison email address, city website, etc. And then setting up a social media account requires agreement with legal terms and conditions of the social media platform. And then it does give an example of what is not an official city account, and that's any social media account page presence created by the alder on their own. So phase one touches on the following items, and these serve as guidelines and restrictions for setup and use of the account. So I won't read through these, but I will give an example for the naming conventions that I brought up earlier. So the policy is that no personal name should be included. So an example is City of Madison, Alder District 15. And then at the very end of the document, you have the phase one guidelines, which alders should keep in mind when using their official social media accounts. For example, the third item regarding promoting and sharing, it is best practice that you avoid sharing, linking, or retweeting to any content that directs people to a donation link unless it does not violate the ethics of code. And so I wanted to provide you of how social media can be used for government. Many local governments use social media as a tool to communicate with citizens, with 7 in 5 American adults saying they actively use Facebook. Chances are that the vast majority of your constituents in your community are active on social media, and that is a stat given by Pew Research Center in 2021. And so, yeah, again, they could be used for a number of things. Promoting events, directly corresponding with citizens, and then creating that rapport with your community. So in the beginning, the policy mentions that the accounts are to be used solely for official council business. So I thought I would do a little bit of research into that and then provide some examples here. And so more specifically, I wanted to provide examples of content that could be utilized on Facebook and Twitter accounts. The general rule for social media is 80% of posts are to inform, educate, or entertain. And then the 20% of posts promote Common Council brand. A lot of when establishing a social media account, a lot of it is experimental. So again, we'd be looking at weekly data analytics to see what posts are performing better than others, and what is creating engagement. And then I just wanted to provide a few images of an alderman in Green Bay. So right here, it looks like elementary students in his neighborhood were giving out candy. This serves as a notice for a road closure. And then this is the breaking ground of a new development in his district. And so then moving forward, and this is my last slide, I wanted to provide things to consider if we were to go with the implementation of phase 1. I would suggest maybe a sample pilot with a few current alders leading up to April elections to see if this is something that we do want to utilize with new alders. And then after what period of time should we create a report of the pilot? And let's see. And then I would say that social media training would need to be implemented among the alders who are participating in the pilot. And then there probably would need to be some standard policies to promote the usage of to make your social media sites a little bit more accessible to those who need those extra efforts. And then we would definitely need to consult with the city attorney. And that is it. And so if you guys have any questions, please ask now.
Thank you, Larissa. Are there questions? I know I have a few, but want to see if any CCEC members have some first. Alder Figueroa-Cole, go ahead.
Thank you so much for the presentation, Larissa. So I read the documentation that is on Legistar, and follow here your presentation. The one thing I don't quite understand is how is that maintained for public records, regarding public records type of thing. Like I mean, I don't use Facebook for anything council because I don't want to have to track it. I don't want to have to send it over to the office. I mean, to the city account. So who is going to be in charge of that, and what's the expectation?
So I believe in the communication tools report that was put out. Yeah, that is something that I would have to consult with City Mike Haas on. So I'm sorry, I don't have the answer for you right now.
Okay. And then the other question that I have is about the statement regarding comments and not blocking people or whatever. It references some policies that need to be placed. So is the expectation that for the pilot, we will have those rules already set up or in place?
Yeah, so the pilot includes guidelines on commenting. they also recommend using certain best practices for that. So alders may choose not to engage in comments at all and instead provide a canned response. Thank you for your comment. But a decision should be made prior to utilizing your Facebook account or Twitter account. Also, you can't turn off the commenting. So yes, constituents would have the ability to comment and comment whatever they want.
I thought that it said that you couldn't turn off commenting.
Yeah, you couldn't turn off commenting,
Mm-hmm.
but you would have to make a decision on whether you would reply, whether you would reply back.
Mm-hmm. Okay, yeah, I don't know about this policy, but I'm looking forward to hear from other people. Thank you.
Thank you, Alder Foster.
Thanks. I was gonna respond on the question about public records, and I should probably refresh myself with what I think it made its way into the report, but we did talk through it quite a bit with the attorney's office. And I believe the answer on this one is because that information is actually available publicly, there's not an additional responsibility to include it with a records request. So, you know, if we get a public records request, it's for records that we're keeping that aren't otherwise already available to the public, copies of our email, for example, but things that are posted on Facebook, including the comments, I believe they're considered already sort of in the public domain, and so that we're not required to include them in like a search of records. The caveat to that is if you did use the messaging function, then those, if you got any private messages in either direction, those would be, sort of subject to that. And I believe the recommendation in there is to just to not have that turned on. On my kind of campaign page, I have a auto responder that says I don't check this. If you want to talk to me, email the City of Madison email address. So I think that was the recommendation, especially for this phase one, to avoid any questions and issues with the public records component.
Thank you, Alder Foster. I appreciate that.
Thank you, Alder Foster. Alder Figueroa-Cole, are you okay if I go with Vice President Curry since she hasn't spoken yet?
I have a follow-up question on that. So there's we have rules of record retention. So is the expectation that these accounts are going to be there forever?
Yeah, again, I don't think so. We don't actually, the rules around providing those or fulfilling those public record requests are really around records that are kept. And so we're not required to keep those social media account transaction records or anything like that. So, again, this was all vetted through the attorney's office when we reread it with them.
Thank you.
Vice President Curry.
Thank you. Sorry, I couldn't find my unmute button. Trying to think how to ask this intentionally, but because I know there's been a policy, but not with this amount of clarity and kind of rules, and especially in terms of the not personalizing it or having it attached to linked to any other, like, for instance, if you have your personal page and then you create a business or government page. So if this goes into effect, how does that impact things that may currently be happening that aren't obviously monitored or under this type of regulation?
And that is a valid concern because I know some of you do have Alder pages and you've created a great following. So that is something that, that's something that would have to be discussed. Phase one does not include information regarding that. I think that would definitely have to be discussed as far as strategy and the implementation of phase one. Again, this is just a policy, not the strategy. But yes, that is a valid concern.
Another question I had is regarding the data analytics and for instance, during last campaign, there was a lot of weird stuff going on with some of the logistics and being able to, for instance, get a sponsored ad. How, like, that obviously would be privy to open records, but would that then be generated like into a report, or who would be analyzing that information and then retaining that and responsible to responding for any requests?
Yeah, that's also an awesome question. But yeah, again, that would probably have to be discussed again with the implementation of Policy One and the strategy and how we wish to go about that. Being the community engagement strategist, I feel like monthly polls would probably be best, and I would probably be pulling those.
Thank you.
Alder Foster.
I wanted to just clarify, I don't know if this is part of what Vice President Curry you were getting at, but the recommendation was to create the ability to have city maintained alder seat attached Facebook pages that an alder could opt into using, but really is not meant, and the associated policy is meant to sort of provide some structure and answer some questions about how that would be set up and maintained. It's not meant to really govern in any way any Facebook page that you might have existing or that you might want to create personally or as a campaign one. And for folks that already have those, and if you've had a good following, you may basically not want to participate at this point in this sort of city-sponsored one. So I just wanted to clarify that in terms of questions around public records and what you do with the page and all of that, there's nothing in this policy or in any other city policy that really prevents you from continuing to do whatever you have been doing. This is just if you wanted to have a city-sponsored one, these would be some of the kind of restrictions around it. The reason this was proposed and the benefit of this, you can probably all imagine, is to be able to have constituents, like or subscribe to these social media accounts and actually stay subscribed like they do to our email blogs when a new alder comes into the position. And so ultimately these pages, could build up a following and could be a good channel to push information out to folks, sort of at a district level akin to our blogs. And for future alders, that may be more desirable than trying to build up their own social media presence with a new account that maybe does have their name and maybe it is meshed in with sort of campaign material, et cetera. So I just wanted to clarify, I guess, that in terms of the intent here.
Thank you, Alder Foster. I mean, I think it's obviously very similar to how we get, we have our blog and when we started our job, we have built-in subscribers. I mean, I had, several thousand when I started that I did not have to worry about getting those email subscribers to subscribe to my updates. And they wanted to get whoever the District 19 alder was, their updates. And so it's very similar to that, but using social media. Alder Figueroa Cole, go ahead. And then I'm going to put myself in the queue because I've got some questions. Go ahead, Alder Figueroa Cole.
I mean, I don't dislike this idea. I think this is a great feature to have. I'm just concerned about the managing of the account when it comes to people out of line with comments that, by common sense, we should be able to just immediately deal with. So I would love to see what the policies will be from Attorney Haas or whoever is going to put them together on having what are the guidelines that allows for people to get kicked out of the page or revolting, how it is. I mean, social media is crazy. And I would like to have the capacity to monitor the pages in a simple way without having to constantly be worrying about going to Haas or whoever to ask for permission to do so. That's kind of the only black hole I see in this thing at this moment, from what I read.
Thank you, Alder. I don't know if Attorney Haas can help me with some of my struggles. Thank you, Attorney Haas, for being here this evening. I will tell you, my social media usage is literally as simple as posting a link to my blog every time I post it, because I've always been under the impression that anything I do on social media needs to be maintained. And I understand the explanation I heard tonight that, if it's in the public and the public can get to it, it doesn't need to. But I've been given explanations in the past that if somebody deletes my comment, for example, to their post, they have now deleted a record that should have been available to the public. And so I'm really, I turn off comments on all my posts, so I'm not worried about trying to retain all of that or make sure certain people have that. So I guess I'm worried about how we comply with records retention when, let's say, Facebook's investment in the metaverse doesn't work out and they go out of business tomorrow and all that data is gone, and the public can't get it. How does that all work?
Those are good questions. I guess I would start with a broader comment in that, this area of law is always developing. Public records cases, court decisions come out, especially regarding new technology and social media. And so I think if this has not been reviewed in a couple of years, we would want to take some time to give it another good look. I'm not sure what, the conversations that Alder Foster alluded to, how long ago those took place. My initial instinct was that I'm not sure that we could not worry about retaining Facebook records, even if they were available somewhere else. If somebody asked for all Facebook posts for an alder for a specific period, and we might have to retain those records to be able to respond to requests like that. I think there was some activity on a social media revision of the city's social media APM. I think that work is probably still ongoing. I think that Attorney Manella in our office was somewhat involved in that. So my general comment is I think we'd want to have some time to be able to give this another good look and address the questions that are being raised here along with others. I mean, how do you account for a pilot program? Who's able to participate when you have some alders who are going to be candidates presumably with opponents and some not, and does that come into play? So I think there's a lot. I haven't been involved in these discussions, and so I did not take a close look at this before the meeting. So I think we just want to have some time to be able to vet this a little bit and address questions that the alders have raised and that we would have about it as well. So I'm not sure if I answered your question, President Furman, but I thought I would take the opportunity to get that out.
No, I mean, you did. I mean, so I think what would be helpful this evening is for us to get some direction from the group, whether or not they'd like to see these policies further explored. I think I think just in general record retention when it comes to social media, making it clear to alders kind of what was made clear to me a long time ago, which is, I have always, my understanding was I always had to have a responsibility to, take a screenshot of comments I made. So very often, very, very, very rarely I'll make a comment to something and then I'll make sure I have a screenshot. If it's ever requested, I got it. So I think, making it clear that everybody has a shared understanding of how they can use social media as an alder. And then is there a desire for us to develop this shared account policy of having a District 19 Facebook page and a District 19 Twitter account? I will say I already know that the District 5 alder who is not the District 8 alder who is not with us this evening does actually have official City of Madison Instagram, Twitter, and I'm not sure if she has Facebook, but she uses it, and she uses it for a random array of stuff. I don't know if we want to. talk about any of that. Whether or not we want to have not just suggestions but guidelines on you shouldn't be using it to promote a campaign rally for somebody in the Democratic Party or stuff like that. I make that clearer, but. Yeah, there's weird lines with this that have always worried me since I've been alder that are very frustrating, because our job as alder is to go where people are, and people are on social media, and so our inability to actually use social media well because of retention or fear of retention or running amok of retention has always frustrated me. So I appreciate this discussion tonight, and hopefully we can get some guidance from members on where they want to see this go. Alder Figueroa Cole.
I mean, I think it is great to have the district accounts just like any other political platform has, so it can be transferred to the next person. But my only concern again will be with those guidelines that Furman just mentioned and the ones I mentioned before. I think if people once have the bandwidth and the desire to use all these methods of communication, more power to them. I do like to share my blog sometimes on my Facebook page or LinkedIn, but I'm kind of reluctant to do that. I mean, I had done that here, maybe a couple of times, but I'm still like a little bit weird to do that on my personal pages. So I would like to have a space to be able to communicate that information, but I also want to be able to maintain some kind of control over people out of line. I mean, I just can't. I mean, there are certain platforms here. I'm just going to say it. I don't go to Nextdoor. It's there's no point for me to go in there. I mean, it is out of control, and I don't want to lose that flexibility. So if the attorney's office comes up with some specific guidelines that I could agree with, I wouldn't mind using this. Thank you.
Thank you, Alder Foster.
Thank you. I guess real quickly, just to also reaffirm, the point of this always has been sort of opt-in, particularly for this pilot round. So, I mean, anybody who's not interested or has questions or doubts, just don't sign up right now. The part about managing comments and ability to sort of manage that, I mean, I think it's one of the things you have to accept about this if you're going to do it, is you can't control what people are going to comment. And so that, I mean, for those of us who are already in the space, with pages that we've created, you kind of, you figure out what works. I mean, for me, I pretty much also just share my blog posts, via my page and share that page out to neighborhood groups. And in general, like, unless it's a real, clean question, not an argument and something that I think will be beneficial for all, I just ignore a lot of stuff and I don't respond. And, you have to be able to do that basically, or, be prepared to get into lots of online conversations. So I think that's, again, just going to be more on an alder level and what you're comfortable with. And I don't know if the attorney's office is going to be able to give us, rules for how we're going to manage that, successfully. The last point is the attachment. I think it's the first attachment on this item in Legistar is the draft that was prepared. It's dated September 2020, and this was Laura Minnelli did work on this, Attorney Haas, with us and for us, and it does actually address the records retention on page 4. It's the last bullet, and it actually says that and this was reviewed also with IT staff. It sounds like there already are mechanisms in place for saving copies of the information, and then if an alder does delete something, then it would be on them to take a screenshot of whatever they're doing before they delete it. But otherwise, the general records will be maintained through city staff with their kind of existing policies around how we do it for other city social media accounts. So folks can take a look there. And of course, it wouldn't hurt to maybe revisit this and make sure nothing has changed in the law in the last couple of years.
Thank you, Alder Foster. Alder Heck.
Thanks. Just this is for Attorney Haas. I guess one thing that our understanding has changed a little bit, or we become more aware of the 50-piece rule and its repercussions. And so that's somewhere we probably would need to update our thinking a little bit to make sure we understood that in this pilot program. So we'd need to think about that. But yeah, as Alder Foster said, we did go round and round with Attorney Manila and get all sorts of tossed around a lot of ideas. So that's all I wanted to bring up. Thanks.
Alder Foster, go ahead.
Just because Alder Heck brought it up, my understanding with the 50-piece rule, and Attorney Haas can speak to this, but I think when we were getting more clarifications around that, my understanding is that the interpretations around social media is that it's more akin to a billboard, and they actually count it as one sort of publication. The fact that 100 people might see it is actually different than sending out 50 pieces of mail or 50 emails. So I think it may not actually change from what we have here, given what we know now.
That's correct.
Thank you for all that. Maybe I can get a little bit of show of hands, and I can interpret that for people that can't see it. I definitely think we need to pursue, making sure that people understand the use of social media, especially, the new alders, and a refresher for alders that may not know how you can use social media and what the retention policy is and what current law is on all of that. Can I get a thumbs up on whether people want us to explore a pilot program for Twitter pages and Facebook pages for alders, similar to how we have that email list? I think is my best example. So I've got enough feed. I've got a majority say yes, and one was as I think the best way to interpret that. So I definitely think this is something that's worth pursuing. I think I really appreciate the examples. But I do think we're going to really trip ourselves up on what the regulations are, and think that there needs to be a lot more time spent with the attorney's office on making sure we're clear on that, and that everybody knows what the parameters are and what they can post and not, et cetera, because social media is a special place. Alder Heck.
Thanks. I just wanted to toss in the idea that this also provides an opportunity for a review of general policies relating to alder communications, even without regard to social media, because I know we all continue to struggle sometimes about, can I do this, or can I say this? Can I publish this link about an event? And this will provide an opportunity for some alders to continue to learn more about the nuances of that.
Appreciate that, Alder Heck. Thank you. Alder Foster.
And I also just wanted to add, I think, this being called a kind of first round pilot is very much that, and not in the just like, hey, it's a new thing, but the intent really was to have like 2 or 3 people who are, particularly interested in it, sign up to be those guinea pigs, work through some of these questions, get some additional things figured out. So, if there are some folks that are interested, I think having just a couple to start would be great. And honestly, it would be great to get some of that kind of going, perhaps in the next, 5 months yet, because it's likely that, just new folks coming onto council is probably one of the times where it would be most likely that somebody would say, oh yeah, I would like to have that, and I want to start sort of fresh with that kind of a page, versus, a lot of us here, maybe we've got our workarounds figured out and we're not, overly anxious to try or do something new. So I think being in a place where we can have this be an option, particularly for new alders, potentially in April, would be a good thing to keep on our radar.
Thank you, Alder Foster. Yeah, I think if anybody is interested, you could certainly speak up tonight, but you could also just, reach out to Larissa and let her know that you're interested in trying to answer some of these questions. The person who said earlier probably isn't, but there might be others. Alder Figueroa Cole.
So going back to being on an election year, who qualifies to be on this pilot and who doesn't?
I think as long as we're not violating the 50-piece rule and that people aren't posting campaign-related stuff, I think it's probably anybody. If there are alders that aren't running for re-election and declare, they certainly are probably a little bit less complicated pilot participants, but frankly, all these things need to be known and figured out anyway. So, having an alder that's running for re-election probably will force us trying to figure out the parameters now, opposed to in 2 years from now.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Appreciate that discussion, everybody. Larissa, do you have any questions for the group, or was that good feedback on helping think about next steps?
I think that was amazing feedback on figuring out next steps. I do just want to add that, this is one component, just referring back to what Alder Heck said, this is one component of an overall communications plan. So yeah, I do appreciate that comment, Alder Heck. Also, this is also to improve alder communications as well. So, but we do got to make sure that it is manageable and maintainable. So, and that's it. I appreciate everyone's time today.
Thank you for the presentation and helping spark the discussion. Appreciate it. Alder Figueroa-Cole, do you have something? Your hand's still up. I'm going to take that as a no. All right. Great. So we will move on to our next item, which probably will be pretty quick. Item number 3, agenda item 37, legislative file 73445, which is having to do with honoring resolutions. I wanted to do a quick check before I get this drafted and referred back to us. We had a pretty long discussion about honoring resolutions a little bit ago, I think we got close to a consensus, not necessarily a consensus I agree with, but I'm okay with any improvement opposed to no improvement, which was, we had talked about, having a different committee. We talked about not doing the honoring resolutions at all, talked about a lot of different things, but wanted to see if people felt like the correct path forward was likely to debate moving honoring resolutions to 6 o'clock instead of 6:30 and start council business at 6:30, assuming we're finished with honoring resolutions, but give more of that half-hour window to deal with honoring resolutions opposed to taking that time out from general council business. So that would likely be what I got out of that last discussion and would be proposing, and I wanted to see, after people had a time to think about it, reflect if they're okay with that, if they have questions with that, if they have other suggestions. And again, I'm happy to bring up all the different other ideas, but wanted to check the temperature here on where people are with honoring resolutions. Alder Foster.
Can you confirm if the shift to 6 o'clock, is that in addition to the changes that were in that attachment, the 20055 or 3336, or are those 3 different options as you see them?
So you're talking about the attachment to this legislative file that has both a referral and consideration of matter change or an honoring resolution board. I don't think we would do a board. I can quickly try to reread the other thing, but one of the questions I think I would have is, can we have a lower quorum count for that 6 to 6:30? So even if we don't have another board, can we not require 14 people in case we can't get everybody to come, or everybody's not available to be there at 6? I do think there is some. I would have some desire to actually. I really do like the 2.0558A actually being a little bit clearer what the honoring resolutions are. So we have a little bit more written definition on, here's what an honoring resolution is. It's kind of broad there, but probably works on, making it clear that, this is about significant accomplishments or milestones, city officials and employees leaving government service for holidays or other noteworthy anniversaries, dates, or commemoration periods related to the Madison community, which the Common Council wishes to recognize. I think that should probably be part of whatever this proposal is. So does that sort of answer your question?
Yeah, I mean, so maybe we just speak to kind of whatever points we find. So I guess I would agree putting some framework around that would be good. I mean, we should just be thoughtful that it doesn't turn into arguments about what counts or doesn't count. So there's a little bit of a risk there, but I think we could definitely do better by tightening that up a little bit. I actually like the part about reading the title and a brief summary as opposed to the full thing, particularly if we don't make other changes. I would really like to support that as a practice. Maybe it doesn't need to happen if we move it to 6 o'clock and there's more sort of time available, but those can just get very long, and I mean, we don't read all of our other important legislation word for word. So I guess that's one that I kind of generally support. And then I think this one suggested public comment would be taken after the resolution is introduced. I guess I'm not sure if that's me. It says subject to 229, so I'm assuming that's the folding it into the regular public comment section, which seems a little bit weird, particularly if we do have it come earlier. So I guess I would just clarify that, whether we're wanting public comment to be disassociated from it or come right after like it does today. And then also I think this, the recipient question, and is recipients and accepting it, is that the same as public comment? Are they different? Because right now we're also, we let them come on video, which we don't for regular public comment. So it's kind of we've got some traditions that aren't really codified around it all together. So all that, I guess I would say I would support having a 6 o'clock start for these, and I think it would be great if it doesn't require quorum. And I wonder if we can't use our existing kind of informational meeting, I think it's called, or we already have it codified in the ordinance, that we can have a sort of informational meeting without quorum. So if there's a way to piggyback on that or mirror that, I think that sounds like a good plan to me.
Thank you, Alder. I brought up having read it while you were speaking and think it's worth noting. I mean, I think there are things that in this 2.055 that you were specifically referring to that should be strongly considered as part of moving to 6 o'clock. So I just wanted at least people to see that and see what I was looking at. But Alder Figueroa Cole.
Thank you. So I definitely like the time limitation. It says 2 minutes or 3 minutes or whatever. So I will be fine with the 3 minutes time limitation for people to speak on these, including us members. As you all know, I went ahead and I have my own ideas on what honoring something or someone means, and I kind of put that to the test during the Hispanic Heritage Month and put that task on myself to get 2 blocks out per week, honoring people or organizations, and that took a lot of work. And I didn't do that alone. I mean, I actually had to put a call out for people within staff, within the city, within friends of friends and organizations I don't even know, to get them to share their experiences and with the rest of the city. So it does take a lot of work to really represent some of the populations or things that we're trying to represent with these honorary resolutions. But I will be satisfied with having time limits on comments. That everything that you guys are proposing, having it early, that's fine with me, all of that stuff. But if we don't limit those comments that sometimes take, a long time, I feel like we'll still be back on the same place.
Thank you, Alder. Any other thoughts? This will certainly come back to this group before as a referral, but I would probably try to get this introduced soon. Attorney Haas.
Thanks. Just for clarification, I think the conceptual issue I'm trying to figure out is if this starts at 6 o'clock, is that a separate meeting or is that the council meeting starting? And because currently 2.055, of course, is part of the council meeting. And so I think we'll just have to sort out those details and address the quorum issue. And is it a separate meeting with a separate quorum requirement, or is it one meeting where the quorum changes after the honorary resolutions? So I think we'll have to sort that out. And then I just noticed it looks like there's a discrepancy in the last line where it says both 3 minutes and 2 minutes for discussion.
All right.
I think it'd be fun to make it confusing. We can apply it the way we want. Yeah, I mean, I think that's a good question. I think because we're probably not going to do a separate committee, we're probably thinking of making this the council meeting. But very specifically, order of business you wouldn't be able to take up the consent agenda until 6:30. You wouldn't be able to jump into public comment until 6:30. But the council meeting with if we can do this with a different set of quorum requirements, wouldn't start until would start at 6, and then the other business wouldn't start until 6:30. So there might be instances where we don't start the council meeting. That's the other thing. We may not start the council meeting at all if we don't have any honoring. So I think we're gonna have to try to figure out some of the logistics of that. And figure out whether or not that's confusing to the public, or also we're going to probably have instances where we may dispense with honoring resolutions in the first 5 minutes, and then we'll have 25 minutes to drink our drinks or something. Alder Heck, sorry.
Thanks. The more I think about it, it makes I get a little queasy about starting a half an hour early, and given the ridiculous length of some of our meetings, I understand the motivation. I would, are we trying to curb the number of honoring resolutions? Or are we really trying to separate them into a different process? And I wish we could find a way to just curb the number and length of honoring resolutions, but I realize we had that discussion. But I think, if there are different quorum requirements for the first half hour of the meeting, I'll just be honest with you, lots of times I won't be there until 6:30. And I can imagine other alders doing that too. I'm a little bit nervous about starting the meeting a half an hour early, and then potentially we have one quick honoring resolution, and then we have 20 minutes to do something else. It's still another half hour time commitment. So.
Sure. I'm curious to hear what other people will say. I think the idea is, if we start a half hour earlier, hopefully our meetings end a half hour earlier, that we're buying us, less time later on. Because we certainly at times will spend a half hour or an hour on honoring resolutions, and that pushes the meeting an hour later.
That's true. That's true.
So, if I was the only person deciding, I would be curbing them as well. But I'd be a fan of moving the whole council meeting to start until 6 or 5:30 period. And whenever you're done with the honoring resolutions, you go into business. I just think that might be a harder lift, and so that's why I'm suggesting this hybrid approach. But do appreciate the feedback and want to hear what other people think as well. So thank you.
Yeah, I'd be interested to know if we could have a lower quorum requirement, but that sounds very complicated.
Alder Foster.
I think those are a good distinction Alder Heck draws. From my perspective, it'd be great to accomplish all of those things. I have very low confidence in our ability to curb them. This description of what they should be is our maybe best attempt at that, but I think there's a good chance we still see a bunch of weird stuff coming through, and then we're either going to fight about it and look like we don't honor whatever thing somebody wants to honor, so I just don't hold out hope for that, to be honest with you. And then even the trying to limit the time stuff. Just to be clear, in this language here, it's really just speaking to the member limitations. We already have those, it gets us in the same bucket of, are we going to actually be, calling points of order and stopping our colleagues in the middle of honoring, some public entity or whatever. So I don't really putting that in here, I don't think is going to get us very far. If we are going to try and do that, I also think we should focus more on, a lot of times it's the people receiving the awards that may talk a bit longer. That's not going to help to put that in ordinance. I think, I have no idea what kind of prep we have for folks that are receiving them. Probably not much at all. But if we're trying to, improve that, then we should probably talk more about what's our, brief chat we have with people who are going to do that and encouraging them to keep their stuff brief, et cetera. But all of that stuff, I guess, just seems pretty peripheral to me. So I do, again, really support moving it up. And I do actually like the differentiation. I would be supportive if it simply was shifting everything a half hour up. I don't think we need, if we're not voting on it in that moment, I don't think we do need quorum to be there. And I don't think it's perhaps as complicated as it might seem. I think we can pretty easily change our ordinances to accommodate this change. And I actually think it would be very appropriate if, even 15 alders are there. There's only 5 alders or something, but it's the people that are sponsoring these and they're making the presentations to their people, and it's still on City Channel for everybody's family to watch. And I don't really I would be fine with it being sparse attendance from alders that come in at 6:15 or 6:30 or whatever. So I at least think that would be appropriate and fine. So then it really truly would be not just shifting things a half hour earlier, but potentially saving a bit of time for folks that don't need to attend that specific session. So I guess I think all of it makes a lot of sense, and I think we should not put too much hope in just curbing the quantity or even the length of the discussions, because we're just going to all feel embarrassed about trying to do it.
Thank you, Alder Foster. Alder Figueroa Cole.
Question. For me personally, again, it's time. Everybody's busy. It's not just us. Everybody's busy. People come to these meetings. They have to wait 4 hours sometimes to speak. Or, now we move that to the top of the meeting, and that's good. But we still know that sometimes there's 2 hours of people waiting for them to talk. And I just don't see why people have to sit there through another 30 minutes or 60 minutes waiting for honor resolutions to be completed. And so that kind of brings the point by you saying that if we don't have a resolution and there's 20 minutes in between, there were my waste of time anyway. So it is a good way to frame it. But to me, time is so valuable on this job and the people that we're trying to serve. And 20 minutes wasted is 20 minutes wasted. So that's at the center of my support of doing something to get this done, to get this changed. What that is, obviously, I don't know anymore at this moment. But yeah, I wouldn't like to have to just sit there to wait another 20 minutes, 25 minutes for the meeting to start because we didn't have any honor resolutions or because we're done or whatever. That's my take on it. Time.
Thank you, Alder. I couldn't agree with you more. I really wish we understood that council time is incredibly valuable. I'm looking for solutions, so I probably will propose something. If you have another idea that you can't come up with this evening, I certainly would be more than happy to get your feedback another time. But I believe status quo doesn't work. I am open to a ton of different ways. Obviously, we had long discussions about this last time. It didn't seem like people wanted to change things too radically, but. I think we both agree there's a problem. It's how you solve it.
Yeah, and I hate to say I thought I had a solution, but Patrick just totally derailed me. So
oh my God, Patrick! Alder Heck, I will give you the floor, even though you did that.
Yeah, I mean those were great points that were brought up. So I'll accept my fate if that's the way we go. I think it's true. It's true about the public too. I think that was a good point. They have to wait through this when they're waiting to give their public comment, and that's really important. It's not just me. But yeah, I could go for some version of this, I guess. I do have a question about what might happen when there are no honoring resolutions. Would we just show up at 6:30? Would the public know that we're actually starting at 6:30, or would we have to have our little meeting first to say, oh, we have nothing, we'll be back in a half hour?
I think we can certainly write it such that, and again, our attorney Haas, you can actually interrupt me if I say something improper, but I think we could write it such that the meeting then would start at 6:30. I think the biggest, most important part of whatever we do is making it clear that the business of the council doesn't start until 6:30, and that we won't be taking up things before 6:30 other than honoring resolutions. And because the agenda has to be finalized at a certain point, before the meeting within 24 hours at the latest. I don't see any reason why we couldn't notice the meeting for 6:30 if there are no honoring resolutions, because we know that, and just that be the case. And it's not that confusing to the public in the sense that there was no honoring resolution. So you're welcome to still come to the chamber and sit there at 6 o'clock, but you're not going to hear any honoring resolutions because there are none, and we're not going to start the meeting because there's nothing to do. So I think there's probably would be an ability to have some flexibility there. And again, I think the consistency for the public would be important. I don't want, as a member of the public, to think that the council may do public comment at 6 o'clock sometimes, or may do it at 6:30. Right now, there's obviously some weirdness with the consistency because we have the honoring resolutions that sometimes take up to an hour or more, and then you're waiting for public comment. But I don't want there to be a floating time when that the most important part of what we're doing that evening, which is getting public comment, making decisions, when that starts. I think we should be very clear about that.
One other just related question would be, what if the honoring resolutions actually do go beyond 6:30? What we need to have a provision for that. God help us.
Yeah, and but I mean, having timed this a bunch of times in the last year, there are definitely times we spend more than a half hour on honoring resolutions. So I think that's entirely possible, and that's why I think you just I think we roll with it. But let's make sure that that's at least clear in whatever is written. That does that mean we stop at 6:30 and take a roll call, and now we have a new quorum obligation? Is the quorum really more surrounding when we actually start doing the business of public comment and actual voting? We used to have public hearings start at 6:45, and sometimes they started at 7. Sometimes they started at 7:30. But that was more of that guideline of, well, they won't start before this. So I assume that's probably what we would do, something like that. Alder Figueroa Cole.
And this is going to put more time on staff, but I really think that we should then have that communicated at every meeting, so we can, if there's no honoring resolutions, the channel should be open at that time, at the 6 o'clock time or whatever time we decide, with a black window there saying no honor resolutions, meeting will resume in 30 minutes, and they count down if they want to have it there. I don't know. I mean, I've seen that on the county sometimes, and I'm in a committee that I share with the county, and there are times when we have to do that. And when we take breaks, perhaps we don't make that note. No, when we go into closed session, I think there's something out there that says that we're in closed session. So then it will be kind of the same thing of getting creative on the chambers to have some kind of signage or notification, no honor resolutions, meeting will start at 6:30. As long as we have that communication visually in the channel and in person, we should be fine. If it takes over the half hour, so be it. If there's nothing there, then there's nothing there.
Yeah, I'll definitely talk to IT media team, and I'm sure somebody is watching this as well. But make sure that this is even doable. Obviously, they used to do CCEC at 4:30. Hybrid is a little bit different, and it does require staff, and so maybe there needs to be some discussion on how some of that works. But I will certainly see what the feasibility of moving it is, as well as having some sort of notification. I'm sure council staff obviously can have something that they tape up when there's no honoring. But I think we obviously also can be very clear about that on our agenda. Alder Foster.
I was just going to, reinforce based on some of this conversation. I really think I would have a preference for more solidly separating it out of the meeting, particularly if we are wanting to have sort of a different quorum or no quorum requirements. I do think that kind of informational meeting or whatever it's called in ordinances, I think that also allowed, it'd be nice if we could still have them on the council agenda and not have to publish a separate agenda and call that to order and everything. But I think it would be cleaner for a lot of these reasons if we really sort of moved this out, had it proceeding, and then actually called the common council meeting to order and took took roll call at 6:30 like we are today. So just as you're kind of looking through how to have that separation, I think that might be easiest for the public to understand, keep things cleanest, that we're sort of creating this new, pre-meeting section that's going to have these honoring resolutions, and anybody that's really, participating in those or invited to those will get clear instructions that they start at 6. But I think it would be less confusing than if we say that we're changing the council meetings to start at 6, but then not really, but then they really start at 6:30. So, I mean, it sounds like Attorney Haas will be working through some different logistical options there, but I think having presenting more of a separation to these things and potentially keeping the council meeting as is starting at 6:30, but having kind of offloaded some of this to this pre-meeting would be a cleaner approach.
Alder Foster, would you be a fan of an honoring resolution board? No, I'm just kidding. We're not going there again. Okay, yeah, no, I appreciate that feedback. Is trying to figure out how this is messaged to the public and how it's separated. I'm hearing that loud and clear. Is that how do we avoid a ton of confusion by moving honoring resolutions earlier, but not moving the entire meeting earlier? Any other questions, thoughts? Guidance that you can give myself and Attorney Haas when we try to perform this miracle task? All right. The good news is we have a much easier topic to move on to for next. For those that don't know, that's sarcasm. This will not be an easy topic, but it's an item that's been referred to us by Common Council, and it's Legislative File 74483, amending basically the Madison ordinances having to do with alder salaries. So Alder Foster, do you want to talk about this? Obviously, there's been a bunch of discussion in the budget about this. This is related to that, and there are certainly a lot of different ways to do this. And so I give you the floor.
All right. Well, I guess I'm kind of, I don't know how much folks really want to talk about the meat of this today. I think I'm just, thinking about the reality of kind of where we're at in things, recognition that there will be discussion about this in relation to the 2023 budget. And so it's a little bit of a kind of chicken egg scenario here where we've got an ordinance that needs to be updated to actually change pay. And then it also needs to be included in the budget. And so I think, I guess I'm of a couple minds with this. I'd be willing to kind of go through the full conversation here tonight about it and, put forward a recommendation. I doubt that our CCC recommendation is going to have a huge impact on the budget discussions and what might end up getting passed or not for 2023 in this year's budget. I think that maybe Attorney Haas can confirm, I believe that this needs to get passed. Is it the December meeting, Attorney Haas, that this needs to be passed in order to take effect?
Yes, it has to take effect before the nomination paper period starts on December 1st.
So it has to be the November 22nd meeting. We have to pass this ordinance if it will take effect for the next term.
Correct.
Okay. Yeah, so in my mind, I'm thinking we have the discussion around the question of 2023 amounts at our budget discussions next week, and then based on what that is, we would have that information in hand and could adjust the actual language of the ordinance to reflect that and to match that, and then debate it at that November council meeting. So it's a little bit difficult for CCC to maybe give a specific recommendation in that case, ahead of the budget discussion. I think we still could certainly put forward a recommendation. So I'd be, happy to have that discussion and have something moved here as well. I think the other part that I'd like to put out there is, we can also consider a conversation in addition to the conversation about what should we do in 2023, about what should we do in 2024, or even what should we do in 2025 if we wanted to push the whole thing, past another alder term. Perhaps some alders would feel more comfortable discussing this and taking a vote on it if they felt there was more distance between themselves and their own thoughts about running again next term, and put it to that future term. Maybe it would help folks kind of separate themselves a little bit from the decision. So I guess I would kind of open it up to folks. I don't know how much you want to talk about tonight. I don't know what, ideas people want to share. I'm obviously very supportive of making a move. I'm in favor of making a bold move considering where we're at right now. I will advocate during our budget discussions to do whatever we can to increase pay for next year. But I'd really also like the council to put our best foot forward to say, what do we really think it should be in 2024 and beyond, or 2025 and beyond. So if anybody's got thoughts on that, maybe we could talk about that tonight in terms of, should it be set at the city average or the city minimum, or what's the right number if we don't have to stress about fitting it in the 2023 budget. So maybe I would put that out there for folks in here if anybody's got any ideas.
Thank you, Alder Foster. People have thoughts on how to best proceed this evening. I think obviously Alder Foster talked about a bunch of the different directions we can go. Alder Heck.
Thanks. I have a question. I want to just clarify that this ordinance change would require a 2/3 vote of council. Is that right?
It's 15 votes.
It requires 15 votes. Okay. Thanks. I as I think about this, I have to keep that in my head.
Thank you, Alder Heck. Alder Conklin. Oh, you're muted.
I did the lower hand instead of unmute. Anyways, good evening, everyone. Nice seeing everyone. So I just want to get some clarification, I guess, a little bit, because I know Attorney Haas sent us the email saying that this really didn't pass because we only had 14 votes versus the 15 votes.
That's a term length thing. So that's the 3 years. Then we're talking about pay.
Oh, okay. See, that's why I wanted to get some clarification.
Yep.
Okay, so the 3 year staggered term, that did not pass.
Correct. That will not be going to the voters as a choice at this point unless somebody reconsiders it.
I see. Okay. But we still have the alder pay that can go as long as we get this in by the next council meeting on the 22nd.
Correct. What makes it really complicated is obviously there's a budget discussion next week, and then we can pass something there or not pass something there. If we don't pass something there, obviously it's very hard to change the ordinance. But even if we pass, a change in the 2023 budget, that doesn't necessarily mean that the salary changes if we can't get this ordinance to get the 15 votes on the 22nd. So something to keep in mind if you're thinking about effective or amounts or that type of stuff.
Okay, because obviously people had a hard time trying to justify, I guess, paying us a living wage. And so, and I said, and I think Alder Figueroa Cole has said something too, somewhere between $25,000 to $30,000. And I was just thinking, if we took our current salary and we doubled it, you know what I'm saying? That would be $27,400. So I think that would be more realistic for people to get on the train of paying us accordingly. So I definitely want to advocate for paying us more. You know what I'm saying? I mean, I would love to get paid the $36,000 that's figured out and equated out to, the city's median average income, whatever it is. But yeah, no, I definitely think if we're going to be realistic and we're going to get these votes, because we need these votes, 15 votes, you know what I'm saying? If we're going to do something realistic, then let's at least double our salary and make it some sort of a halfway living wage, would be my opinion. And going forward, I think also that this should be evaluated, you know what I'm saying, every term, because every year would be a lot, but I think definitely every term, this should be evaluated and we should get some sort of raise, definitely with the cost of living is not going to decrease at all. So I think to make this an equitable job for folks to really serve their community and in the capacity of having a family themselves, like we have to be realistic. So, those are just my thoughts and ideas about that.
Alder Conklin, if it's okay, I'd like to ask you a question after just at least proposing this thought or this frustration. Obviously, some of the discussion has been on 2023 has been very focused on how much is left in the levy and how much can we afford based on that. I appreciate you coming up with some numbers on what you think would be a possible increase. Do you have any thoughts on tying it to something in particular? I mean, this is such a difficult conversation to have. People think that we're doing something just to enrich ourselves, and that's why we're talking about salary. But the idea of looking at one of those living wage charts, and I'm happy to bring up the chart that was part of the amendment, and saying, in 2024 we're going to start pegging it to this, and so city staff should be looking at this. I think that's been the argument that Alder Foster has made in the past on let's pick this one thing, and let's every year or every 2 years we would reevaluate that and what the number is and adjust the salary based on that, rather than coming up with just what we believe to be a reasonable number now, and then sort of kick the conversation to another day. Do you have any thoughts on what that looks like? And would it be helpful to see that chart? Obviously, I'm putting you on the spot. Already. Yeah, I'm putting you on the spot. But I mean, there's all sorts of different levels, obviously, of living wage, and there's all sorts of different averages and that type of stuff.
I mean, I just don't think that we are servants. You know what I'm saying? We're here to serve our community, yes, but we are not servants to everybody in our community. I just think that folks, I welcome anybody to come be an alder for a day, be an alder for a week, something, and we've gotten support letters. And the man said, one constituent said, like, oh my God, like I literally have just looked at the agenda and it's 300 pages, or the budget, and it's, and it's overwhelming and it's a lot of work. So until people actually do this job, like, yeah, of course they think like we're here to be professional politicians, which is not the case. Like in a 2-year term, nobody is going to be a professional politician, but in those 2 years, you should be able to support, clothe, house, and feed your family. In those 3 years, it's like we're trying to fix everybody else's root causes or make sure that everyone in the community has their basic needs met. But the folks that are advocating to have their basic needs met for their constituents can't even get their basic needs met on all their salary. Like, I don't see how we're not connecting the dots that this is not equitable or attainable for an average person in Madison, Wisconsin to do this job. I can understand why there's been older retired people on this board, because someone else has to be bringing the bacon home because you're not doing that. So I really think that this we got to make the change. Like you said, we cannot stay status quo. Like, this is not working, and it's not going to be foreseeable for me to stay on if I cannot continue to take care of my family as a single parent. Like, this is not working for me. I need another job. And this job is already so demanding and full time. It's like, how am I going to balance that? I'll just never see my kids anymore. So does that answer your question?
You sharing your perspective is incredibly helpful, Alder Conklin. So I do very much appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay. You're welcome.
Alder Foster.
A couple thoughts. One is I would really strongly recommend, I didn't feel as strongly originally, but the more I've sort of worked on this and heard the discussion, I do think it would be in the city's best interest to peg this to something connected to the city pay scale, and not to any of the living wage numbers that I cited, not to like average area income numbers that I cited. All of those have such a huge leg in reporting. They're like, the living wage stuff is published once a year and it's like at least a year old. And then if that's going to be used to inform a future rate, then either we're going to be doing a lot of complicated calculations about what we think is going to happen. And so I just think it's messy and not really great. So I would really encourage us to think about one of the either, there's City of Madison minimum, that's the 1904, there's City of Madison median, 3291, City of Madison mean. It could be a percentage of one of those things if people think that is sort of better. But I guess I would really encourage us to consider recommending something like that and not the other numbers that I've included for reference, just because I think it's going to make it really challenging for finance staff. And we're also just, it's a lot of guesswork, and it's just really kind of old compared to the calculations that we could do with internal numbers. And then the other thing I would say is, I think tonight what might make the most sense for CCC, if we're so inclined, is to move a recommendation for this, whatever we think the thing should be generally, really not worrying about 2023 and acknowledging and accepting that following the budget discussion, there would likely be, an alternate or a substitute put forward that would match what funds may be available or not in 23, but then could also use whatever we're recommending as the sort of go forward number. So I guess that's what I would maybe recommend our focus here tonight is recommend what we think it should be going forward and not really concern ourselves with the 23 number right now in this discussion.
Stopping the share because I can't find my unmute button. Alder Mack.
Thanks. I just wanted to get some clarity on what Alder Foster just said. So are you saying that you would rather that this be considered in the 2024 budget, or are you saying not until the ordinance change would not be until 2025, therefore the 2025 budget would be the first time this would be considered? Or were you saying something else?
Yeah, thanks for letting me clarify. So there's sort of two legislative items. There's a budget amendment that will be, just like what was at finance, that would potentially budget additional money for increased alder pay beginning in 2023. The current ordinance that's in front of us that we're talking about right now basically matches what was originally proposed. And what I'm saying is we will all know the outcome of that after we have the budget deliberations. And then this ordinance that's in front of CCC right now will be in front of council at that next regular meeting following the budget deliberations. So at that time, I would expect that whatever comes out of budget deliberations, if council ends up saying, hey, here's $200,000 that we're going to put towards this that equals this amount, then I would expect that, we would put forward a substitute to this ordinance change that would match that for 2023. So I don't think we have to really try and inform the 2023 number with our conversation here tonight and just let the budget deliberation do that. But I don't think that whatever we come up, that it seems obvious that whatever we end up with 23, and it may be $0, is really likely more a result of the 2023 budget deliberations and not really what we think it should be. And that if we were to set via ordinance an increased pay in the future, and it could be effective starting in 2024 budget. Never mind. It would have, if it's not done. Yeah, it could be 2024 if we do it at this November meeting. Or I was suggesting that we could choose to push that start date out to April 2025, just to give people more space. I don't really have a preference, I guess, either way. And in either case, the conversation and the recommendation that I think would be most meaningful coming out of CCEC tonight would be, what do we think that 2024 or 2025 number should be? We can move that forward as a recommendation, knowing that there would still likely be a substitute to this specific ordinance, and that would reflect whatever comes out of the budget discussion for 23, regardless of what we recommend tonight.
Okay, thanks. I still have
Hopefully that was clarifying and not more confusing.
Pieces of it made sense, and it all made sense briefly. So you're suggesting that,
let's talk about what we want for 2025 Alder salary, and let's recommend that.
I'm sorry, we're not really following order, Chair, but I'm just going to pipe in and say I agree that something like City of Madison mean eventually needs to be what we peg to. And that wouldn't even require the provision that's in the current ordinance change draft in terms of annual increases. We would just peg to that, and that would just eliminate the need to have a separate logic for increases, because we'd get the increases, if there were any, through that means. Thanks.
Thank you, Alder Figueroa Cole.
So when we make the suggestion of the changes to the ordinance, are you suggesting that we just attach it to, for example, City of Madison minimum and not put a dollar amount, whatever that might be, so we don't have to continually change the dollar amount like it is today? We just leave it to whatever that is at that time, using the terminology on that first column?
I think so. We could, hear from the attorney's office if there. I know sometimes like to say which, beginning in this year is this amount, but then thereafter, tracking to this thing. But yeah, the intent that I'm suggesting is that we peg it to a easily understood and calculable figure that would be updated on a yearly basis, and that would establish the pay.
Okay.
So thank you. I mean, I will throw in my 2 cents. I mean, I really struggle. I do like the living wage stuff a lot, but recognize that that's hard data to keep up to date and be accurate about and to have good numbers with. But I really, when we're talking about this, like the idea of tying this to something real opposed to just some sort of number. I really obviously like the idea of also tying it to something that's continually updated, and we don't have to have a fight about giving alders a few hours more here and there every 2 years, or make that difficult. Obviously, looking at this chart, we can see, I mean, the median or the mean is somewhere around the living wage for 2 working adults and 2 kids, or give or take. I was just playing with a number on could you do a percentage of the mayor's salary? The hourly for the mayor is $75.56, and so could you do a percentage of that? But I think that gets you, and that half of her hourly would be $37.50, but that doesn't really, to me, make the story on why we're doing what we're doing. I think this argument for me about changing the pay is making it a living wage. And obviously, a one-person adult with 0 children has a different living wage than 2 working adults and 1 child, and so it certainly makes it a little bit more complicated. But I really do think we should be trying to get somewhere around there, understanding that updating this is not the easiest thing, and so. Open for somebody to pick something, make a recommendation, with certainly the idea of not as worried about 2023 because we don't know what's going to happen at the budget hearing, but something that we all believe is a fair long-term compensation for a job that shouldn't be considered $13.77 if we think people that aren't privileged are going to be able to continue to do it. Alder Foster.
Well, I will move a recommendation that we set the alder pay at the City of Madison mean hourly rate times the expected hours per week, which is currently 20.81.
There a second? Second by Alder Figueroa Cole.
No,
Second.
I haven't.
Oh yeah. Well, we have a motion, so we're gonna get. So, do you want to second it, or you want somebody else to second?
That's fine.
Okay. So we can have discussion about that motion. Alder Figueroa Cole, I think it did. Alder Foster, did you want to speak more to that, or do you feel like we really talked about that, or what would you like?
Yeah, I'll just say real briefly. If somebody wanted to argue the median instead of the mean, let's go for it. I guess the reason I picked mean is also it is closest to what was recommended from TFOG's, which is the 80% AMI for a family of 3. There was some good conversation about why that might make sense, and this is obviously not even quite that. But I really do like the concept of average. And so whether it's mean or median, we can have interesting mathematical debates about that. But I guess that's why I think setting it at average city pay is a good solid starting point.
Thank you. Alder Figueroa Cole, did you want to speak to this?
Yeah, I almost forgot what my question was, but it came back. So again, we are making a recommendation to change the ordinance. Is that what we're doing right now? We're not talking anymore about the budget, correct? Okay. So we had the language of.
Sorry, I am struggling with my microphone. So sorry for my frustration there. You heard me sigh. We have an ordinance change that has been referred to us. So there's a piece of legislation right now that we're debating. We're not talking about the budget. That's correct.
So we are. I'm okay with making that recommendation. Thank you.
Any other questions, thoughts, comments on the motion that's on the floor? Okay, unless I see otherwise, I'm going to assume approval by unanimous consent. All right, and then we can move on to our next agenda item. If I can find my agenda, I believe it is CCEC schedule. So I thank everybody for that participated in the doodle. There was a clear favorite, so much so that actually Wednesdays generally worked for everybody. There were some exceptions here and there where Wednesday didn't work. Thursdays, we based on the data that was given, there'd be tons of, we'd probably struggle to get quorum. There's way too many conflicts on Thursdays. So Karen, I shared and the data with the proposed schedule with everybody. I don't know if anybody has any thoughts on that, but if everybody's okay with that, we'll go ahead and send out the calendar invites and make sure that time is reserved, and we'll have the remaining meetings of our term in 2023 on that Wednesday before council meetings. Any discussion, thoughts? This is not something we need to approve, but I'm happy to get feedback from the group. Alder Heck.
I'm just going to grumble briefly that there are a couple of them where I have a conflict, and I think Alder Bennett will too. But I understand, and if I can attend, I will, and if I can't, I'll wish you luck.
Appreciate that. We should consider making CCEC dates holidays, but our holiday list is very long. But yes, hopefully you can make the meetings and you can decide on agendas where you're going to be. All right, we're gonna move on to the next item on our agenda, which is 72110, the council office update. Karen, take it away.
Actually, I have a quick question about the CCC meeting dates. What happens if Attorney Haas has a conflict?
I am personally fine as chair going without Attorney Haas, if that's what ends up having to happen. Obviously, if there's a particular item on the agenda that we definitely need him for, we can see if somebody else in the office can help. I really appreciate him being here, but it's, if he can't be here, it's so hard to schedule stuff. Attorney Haas, you have a thought on that?
I have the same conflict that Alder Heck has, PSRC, potential conflict, as long as we're doing Zoom, it's possible to be at 2 meetings in one place, but that would be the only concern. And I think, it would probably be, not every meeting. And so we can make arrangements if somebody else had to cover one of the meetings for me.
Yeah, and Attorney Haas, we could probably try to be a little bit clearer on, There are times you definitely contribute on things that we would still be able to figure out if you weren't here. But then there are certain very specific items that we do need the legal advice for. So you and I can talk if you think there's a conflict, and you could say to me, "Hey, Keith, could you make that in the beginning? Because I really do need to be involved in that discussion." Or nice to have and need to have type discussion. So I'm happy to try to accommodate that. But tell you that scheduling this is really hard. Karen knows that I've been putting this off for months because of how hard it's been.
Thanks.
So, and thank you. All right. We'll move on to the council office update. Karen, take it away.
All right. So I will quickly share my screen. I sent out the update, I believe, yesterday. Do you see the update? Okay. I can never tell. All right. I can never tell what anyone can see on this screen. All right. So I guess I'll give a quick overview, right? As a symbolic landmark, we have removed that close to the public sign from our office door, which is very exciting, symbol of our being fully staffed for the first time in a long time. So we have hybrid meetings. The staff have set up hybrid work schedules so that there's a couple folks and plan to be in the office every day. So that's a big excitement for us. And then, as you know, Larissa and Katie are reaching out to each of you. I think they might be doing it on a staggered approach so that they can take in all the information. Weekly meetings and events highlights, it's going to be coming out from them from now on. And Liz has been making a lot of progress, and she's been creating a lot of documents and checklists, and so not only getting through our backlog, but also working on our issues with internal documentation and cross-training materials. And I feel like reading this all maybe is redundant, but just wanted to let you know we're working on, we started looking at the council policy guide, and we're going to come back with some revamps that I hope you'll like. And of course, we're talking a lot about New Alder onboarding. And you're aware of the info session. I think there's quite a bit of information here, and how the ordinance or how the resolution that you all passed interfaces with some other instructions from the policy guide that were passed by, or at least they'd been voted on by the old CCOC, and Attorney Haas is going to clear it all up for us, so we all know what we're doing going forward here in the election season. Something I thought was kind of exciting is this information session is going to be hybrid. So instead of having a fully in-person information session and then a hybrid council meeting, we will be having a hybrid information session as well as a hybrid council meeting. So those of you who were planning to come virtually that night can also still attend this session. Thoughts, questions?
Thank you, Karen, for that update.
Thank you.
Look forward to hopefully everybody being at that information session. And thank you, Karen and Attorney Haas, for putting that together. Appreciate it. All right, next item on our agenda is just very briefly talking about what our next meeting looks like. If anybody has any suggestions, I'll be honest. I don't have a strong agenda for the next meeting or a strong desire to talk about it too much tonight, but I do at least want to give people the ability to give suggestions as a group right here, right now. And then I certainly can take emails from people on topic suggestions. There's a few things going on with orientation and BCCs, and obviously we got our council update here that could be on our agenda. I think I probably will have something honoring resolution related that I'll introduce at the meeting at the 22nd. If I could arrange that with Attorney Haas in the middle of all this budget stuff. But if there's anything sticking out for people that they want to see on that agenda. Either speak now or shoot me a note. Perfect. I entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Can I get a second? All right. It's either Alder Heck or Alder Conklin. Karen, flip a coin. Unless I see objection, I'll assume approval by unanimous consent and wish everybody a great evening. Thank you, guys. Good night.